Hi everybody, so this is an overview of doing the lab for week 6, which is March 21st. I'm just going to briefly show you the steps involved, and then we'll go into RStudio and I'll run some of the code. You can see how that works. We're basically doing the same sorts of things that we would be doing in lab if we were meeting in person. But I thought it would be helpful for you to have a video component here where you see what I'm doing on the screen, and you can pause it and rewind it and go over it however many times you need to, as well as get in touch with me with questions. If our virtual class meeting on the 21st goes well, I'll also be doing the lab live with you all, but just in case, this is here as a resource for you as well. So the first thing we're going to do is go over to the week-by-week schedule for the rest of the semester. And if you went on the course tour that I made a video about, then you know each week contains everything that you need for that particular week. And so we're starting off with March 21st, week 6. And scroll down a little, and there is a folder for our lab. And it tells us a little bit about what's going on in the lab, a couple swirls, and then making graphs in RStudio. So let's click on this. The overview tells you what we'll be doing again, the swirl lessons, and then looking at code for making graphs, both bar graphs and histograms. Paying attention to things like making sure your graphs have really clear, understandable titles and labels, making sure that you as a statistician, sociologist are able to look at the graph and say something about it, interpret it sociologically, and you'll practice making a histogram for a variable. We're going to look at age, and ultimately you'll have a knit Word document that you'll upload. The upload is due on Friday, March 27th by 10 p.m. So looking at the step-by-step instructions, the first thing we're going to do is Swirls 7 and 8. After that is done, we're going to go into the notebook area of RStudio to run some code. So let's get started by, I'm going to open up a new tab and go to Lehman, log in to Lehman 360. Let's see. Hope that it's working. Okay, and so we have RStudio right over here, and log in with the exact same information that you just used. And you may not have looked at RStudio for a while since you didn't have to, since we didn't have class. So just to refresh your memory, this part where we were last working is the notebook area. And what we want to do to get through Swirls 7 and 8 is to make sure we go down to the console area. So way down here, I think you can see I'm pointing out bottom left. Let's make this window bigger and actually make it all the way big just so we can see everything. And remember that to get into the swirl tutorials, the first thing you have to type is the word library, and right next to it in parentheses, you're typing the word swirl, hitting enter, and then it'll greet you sometimes. Sometimes it doesn't say anything. But then the next thing you need to do to get into the swirl menu is to type swirl and an empty set of parentheses after it. Okay, so it's asking me if I want to continue with one of the lessons that I did previously and didn't finish. I'm going to say, let me start something new. which for me is option number 7. I then am at the top menu, and what I want is to pick 1 for sociology swirl. And then we are going to do graphs of 1 variable and bar graphs and bar charts, which are 7 and 8. So I would put 7 here. And then, you know, it's the typical swirl where it's asking you to do things. Here it's asking you to load ggplot. And so forth. So you're going to go through the swirl. After you complete swirl number 7, excuse me, you're going to go to the next lesson and do swirl number 8 by going up to the main menu again and choosing swirl 8. After you have finished both of your swirls, then the next thing you want to do is make sure that you will exit out of swirl completely. And the way that you do that, at least for where I am right now, is to type the word by and an empty set of parentheses after it. So in my case, it tells me leaving swirl now, type swirl to resume. And so I'm out. If you're in the menu and you've completed your swirl lesson, you may get the option to go up a level of your menu, and it might say type 0 to exit swirl. And so you would type 0. You want to make sure that you have this somewhere so that you know you're out of swirl. The other thing would be if you type something like by and it says it doesn't understand. If you get an error message like that, it typically means that you're out of swirl because it's not understanding you telling it to leave swirl because it's already out of swirl. In any case, now we are done with our 2 swirl lessons. I obviously didn't go through each of them step by step with you here, but I do have the swirl solutions posted up on the week by week for March 21st. So if you get stuck, you can skip, or you can look at the swirl solution to figure out what you need to do next. Now we're going to go back to the lab, and we made sure we're exited from swirl, so we want to open up our R notebook and go to the bottom to find some blank space. So I'm going to minimize the console, and I'm going to make sure my notebook is open, which I can see it right here. I have a couple other things open, but this is my notebook from last time. Last time we were talking about measures of central tendency. And your line numbers may not be exactly the same as mine, but I'm in the mid 200s right now, and I'm at the end of my notebook. I'm going to go down a couple spaces till I have a blank line. Then I'm going to go back over to the lab instructions and click on that. I'm going to take everything from line 1 all the way down to the end, which is line 78. I'm going to right click to copy. Then I'm going to go back, over to RStudio and click on a blank line and right click to paste. And then scroll back up to where the beginning is, which for me is around 260. So let's go chunk by chunk. This video is going to end up being in 2 parts because the software gives you a 15-minute limit. So I'll just get started, and then I will probably make a second video continuing. But the first thing we want to do is load all of our libraries and background information. Don't worry, as usual, I got red error messages. I don't care. I have my GSS data showing up over here, and I've loaded all the packages we need. The one for graphs is called ggplot2. So don't worry about any of this stuff. So you want to think about your variable's level of measurement, and that determines which graph is appropriate. If you have a variable that's nominal or ordinal, you want a bar chart. If you have a variable that's interval ratio, you want a histogram. And I again emphasize here, and this will be important for your midterm lesson as well, that you want to have clear labels and titles that are descriptive. Okay, so here is a very basic set of commands to make a bar chart for the nominal variable race. And just to point it out, this is the command. We're talking about working with the GSS data. I input a special additional command to make sure that anybody who has an NA, a missing value or a not applicable value is removed. So it's just people who've given a meaningful answer. And we're looking at this variable race, and we're making a bar chart. Okay, so just some very basic commands, and we're going to run this chunk, and this is what we get. So let's take a look at this. Across the bottom, it just gives us our variable name. Up and down the side, it gives us the count, the number of people in each racial category. And we see that white is the tallest category. It's somewhere like 48,000 people. Black is a little under 10,000, and other is the smallest group. The graph is just basic black and white color. The labels don't really tell us anything, and there is no title. So this is at its most basic what the graphing command does. This is not what we want for our midterm projects. We want labels, we want titles, we want color. And so we are going to move on to do that. I will show you in the next segment of this video. So I'm going to wrap up this, and then we're going to move over to part 2 of this video.